About innovation. We started with Taylor and I talking about teaching creativity at the university setting. We talked a little bit about the idea of this interdisciplinary studio in the library. And then we had Jeff Wright come and lead us in an innovation boot camp. This is the third in that series where we're going to have Jeff and Holt talk to us about the libraries of the future and 21st and design thinking, and how design thinking can help something like a library even to innovate its practices and its ways of going about its work. So we're excited to have them. Jeff is a senior associate university librarian, so we're excited to have him. He's very high up in the library's infrastructure. And then Holt, some of you may know, is a fellow alum, but back when we were called instructional science, so maybe you can talk to him about that sometime. And then he got a PhD in the EIME program, and then is now the assessment librarian, and has been working with us on doing some of the assessment in the library too. So I'll turn the time over to them.
I kind of feel like I'm in church with announcements followed by a prayer. And so, it's the first time I've been said that I'm part of the infrastructure of the library. So I'm part of the structure of the library. I hope not the infrastructure.
We'll bring up on your back.
That's right. We want to start out kind of with a broad view, and I think President Worthen would be proud. He's been talking a lot about the mission of the university and the aims. This is the mission of the university, and I hope that you all could quote this if it wasn't up here. The mission of Brigham Young University is to assist individuals in their quest for perfection and eternal life. I'm involved in the interviewing of people who come to be faculty in the library, and this is something that is always emphasized to them. The Board of Trustees of this university cares very deeply about who gets to have influence on the students who come here. And it's because this is the mission of BYU. And it's because faculty who come here tend to stay a long time. Further in the mission statement it says, when somebody's at BYU, it ought to be a period of intensive learning in a stimulating setting. Now, I don't know how many of you have been in the library very much. I was a freshman at BYU back in 1980. The only stimulation you could get in the library back then was to pull a book off of the shelf and read it. The internet may have existed. I couldn't swear that it did or did not, but it certainly was not present in the library. Yes, we had a media center. Back then it was cassette tapes. There were probably even some 8-tracks still floating around. But stimulation was not what you can find and what we hope you can find in a library today. There is a commitment to excellence expected. We like to hire faculty in the library and staff who have that same commitment to excellence, that commitment being that we help our students and our faculty at the university to pursue excellence in their own studies, hopefully leading to the full realization of human potential. And that's as much for the people who work here as for the students that we serve. So, taking off of that mission, the library has 3 strategic goals that we are trying to pursue. And the first of those is to improve the discoverability of and access to our resources. And resources, please conceive that very broadly. I think the most valuable resource that the library currently has is the people who work in the library. And particularly where you're concerned, the subject librarians who have advanced degrees in the disciplines that for the departments that they serve. Rachel Wadham is an educator. She is our education subject librarian. Currently, she is the only subject librarian. That's actually not true anymore. I was going to say she's the only subject librarian who has responsibility for all departments in the McKay School of Education. We actually divided one of those departments, or one or more of those departments, off recently. But resources doesn't include just the books that are sitting on our shelves. It doesn't include just the databases, the electronic journals and things that you can have access to. It also includes our special collections materials. Now, I don't know how much IP&T students would be using special collections materials, but you may. Being aware of all of these things, but again, most especially the people. And we actually have one of those librarians in the room today. I didn't realize. I said, oh, what's Leanna doing here? He said, well, she's actually a student in this program. It's like, hey. Leanna is not a subject librarian, but she is very involved. Do they all know what you do in the library?
No.
Leanna, I'm going to invite you, even though you don't have the microphone, stand up for just a minute and tell your colleagues here what you do in the library.
I am the instruction librarian, and I do information literacy, so it's not only just learning how to evaluate and use it.
You work a lot with the subject librarians, and particularly as they're advanced writing classes.
I coordinate all the advanced writing classes get to come in for a library day. I teach a lot of them. I coordinate with librarians to teach those classes, and I'm lucky enough to teach a lot of first-year writing classes as well.
So, people like Leanna contribute greatly. Shiloh, who is here, she has also worked in the library, does not work there any longer, but her husband's one of our faculty members. We have a lot of resources that are unique to BYU. Again, among those that are unique to BYU, none of our librarians work in another library. We try to collect things that support your scholarship and the scholarship of other students here. And I don't know if you're aware of how much the university spends on an annual basis for materials. It's between $10 and $11 million that we expend in licensing those databases, acquiring materials that go into special collections, buying the books that sit on the shelves. And by the way, we're doing a lot less book buying than we used to, at least in physical form, because they're not being used as much. I was just informed this morning that our electronic book usage has now surpassed our physical book usage. It's the first year that that's happened.
Are you talking about Overdrive?
Overdrive is just one aspect. We have ebooks coming from a variety of places. And Overdrive tends to be a lot more along the popular reading side of things. So no, I don't believe that Overdrive has been what's actually pushed us over that hump. The other two goals, the first one is to provide spaces that facilitate these things: collaboration, experimentation, creation, and discovery. And this might resonate more with the kind of introduction that Rick gave, this being the third part in an innovation series. We're involved in creating that interdisciplinary space in the library because we believe that the library is a place where all the disciplines meet. It's been described as an academic Switzerland. We're neutral. We don't own anybody, and nobody owns us. So you can either be equally at home or equally not at home in the library. I don't suppose the engineering students would feel tremendously comfortable coming over to the McKay building and interacting over here, just the same way I don't think you would be feel particularly at home going over and interacting in the labs in the engineering building, or in the chemistry building, or in the life sciences, or in the Talmadge building. But the library is a place where we want everybody to be able to come together and work with one another. Ultimately, fostering deep collaboration that produces new knowledge and facilitates learning. This speaks a lot, but not solely, to faculty. You're all graduate students, and we think that it may speak quite as much to you as it does to faculty. I'm assuming that some of you will end up being faculty either here or in other institutions, and we hope that your experience in the library will help. I want to just give one particular plug here. I've spent some time talking with James Crane and other people in graduate studies about how the library might serve graduate students better. So as you're going through this exercise, which I'm going to have, even though Holt has talked to me about this, he conceived this exercise, and so I'm going to have him introduce it to you. I'd like you to keep in mind, whether you were an undergraduate here or not, your graduate students here, how can the library better serve you? And keep that in the back of your mind, not only through this exercise, but as you go through the remainder of what we do today, because I'd be interested in hearing from any or all of you about ways that you think we could serve the graduate demographic better than we have been doing. I personally have a sense that we don't serve graduate students as well as we need to. So Holt, will you introduce? Sure. And before you do that, let me give you the microphone because
they can hear me.
he's recording,
he's recording.
and so he wants you to wear the microphone.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, I know. I said the same thing.
I taught in a gym for 20 years, and I figured if people can't hear me in a room this size, then I didn't do my job right. We're going low tech on you. You'll notice on each of your tables there's 2 pieces of paper and 3 pens, so that means 3 of you can write at one time. This is going to be about a 2-minute exercise. What I want you to do is currently describe how you currently use the library. Keep in mind Library resources don't just mean the physical presence of the library, it can mean the online resources also. So at your table, and people. So take a moment and write down all of them. Just use one sheet of paper because the other one's for another source. All the ways that you use the library right now. They have a sticky side to them. I didn't know that when I got them, so.
Okay. Ready, everybody? I do too.
I'm actually converting my VHS collection to DVD. Really? At the library. You do that there? What's occasionally. Digital video.
VHS is the poor man's version of beta.
That's right. That's going back there.
It is.
Books and articles.
Are you contributing or are you staying out of it?
I'm gonna stay out of it.
In fact, something I guess you would do it at the library. You can do it here.
I don't know how to explain it.
Scratch that one.
I asked her
But the same way I've used, not sure that I've used really loud.
Okay, we'll be giving you about 1 minute to wrap things up here, so 1 minute to finish off what you've got.
Is that where you are now? Is that where you
Right. But yeah, that's the library and access. Yeah, more than
I can use courses with
yeah.
One of their new resources, you may not be using it yet, but everyone has premium Mendeley accounts.
Yes, I do.
And I use Mendeley, but I have a premium account from previous work with them, but that would be something I would use. That will, because I teach workshops on them, so they gave it to me as an
Okay, if you can finish off and I can get your attention back up here, please.
study spaces. What?
I know you do it. You don't want anyone to follow you. We were talking about that one day, and I was like, it's kind of sad you have to go to the library and check out students. You don't exactly respect the
If I could take just 1 minute and maybe have 2 or 3 volunteers say what were some of the things that you found common in your table of ways you use the library. Any volunteers, and I will let you know if there aren't none. I start picking at the back because you're sitting in the back.
I don't know what's going on, but I guess we pretty much
Jay.
did all of it.
How many do you want?
Just 2 or 3.
2 or 3. Our very first comment was not at all.
Okay.
The second one we had was as a place to study. Another one was books and online articles and DVDs.
Okay. Anyone else?
A quiet place to nap or
Yeah, we actually have those quite often there. Okay. Anyone else?
We had some that were interesting, like sheet music and audio recordings and audiobooks and things like that.
Okay.
Study rooms.
Okay. You can book group study rooms. And you can book them for up to 4 hours, but if you're really innovative, you can get them for up to 8. And if you want to, I can tell you how to do that later.
3D printer.
Huh?
3D printer.
3D printer, that's always going.
Can you use it?
Other things?
Use it. You just have to reserve it because it's always going.
Yes.
We have enough to meet with librarians for research.
Yeah, the librarians are actually eager to meet with any grad student, and there's a number of projects that have been going on to try and say, what can we do? For example, if you walk in on the 3rd floor, there's the Research and Writing Center, and there's efforts to start helping graduate students do the editing that they need for their papers, for their thesis, for their doctorate, so that takes a lot of a burden away from the faculty, and to give you a second pair of eyes to take a look at it. Now, I will let you know, Yeah, and it's a great resource. I've been there for a little over, I guess it's coming on about a year and a half now, and I've continually amazed. I'm the assessment librarian, which in terms of education, if you took evaluation and submitted it for assessment, that's what I do. And I've worked with a couple of people in IP&T, and I continue to work with them. Leanne actually is going to be using, we call it the ultimate field test. We have a software called Moray that actually records what's going on your screen so that we can see the search patterns that you follow for finding things to help us in instruction. And we just got this put on a laptop, and so she's taking that for a field test this summer in Turkey. We don't encourage all field tests to go that far abroad, but we're happy with that. We have a variety of it, and I will let you know right up front before I go any further, if any of you are interested in evaluation or assessment, in the year and a half I've been at BYU, I've probably had between now 2 and 3 dozen job opportunities come by to do the job that I'm doing at BYU at other universities, where they simply say, we want to know how well X works, and you design and research and analyze and say, here's how well it's working, and here's the recommendation. And I will let you know just about anybody that I've worked with, once they've come for the project, but they love the library when they leave. Casey and Melissa are 2 examples for right now. I'm going to run through some of the assessments we have because we are really assessment driven. If you get an email from me, you'll notice the subtitle on it. It says, "In God We Trust, Everyone Else Needs to Bring Data." And we truly believe that. In taking a look at the different studies that we have, and we're going to speak to each one of these. Did you want to do the LibQual and MISO, or?
If you would like me to, I will.
I'll let you do those 2.
LibQual is a service quality satisfaction survey that we do every 2 years. We're actually doing the survey again starting next Monday. We only do, because we have 30,000 students roughly and 1,500 faculty, we only do a stratified random sample. So we select a certain number of undergraduates, certain number of graduate students, certain number of faculty in a random fashion, and send out the invitation to complete the survey to them. There are 22 core statements. We only ask everybody to complete 9 of them. Otherwise, we were finding the survey takes a very long time to do. If you're giving them the whole thing, they can do it in around 6 to 7 minutes if they get this subset. But we've got great longitudinal data over the time. It is a normed instrument that's been proven to be very valid and reliable. It's used not just in the United States, but in quite a number of countries around the world. Again, examines patron perceptions of service. We have those core statements, but we also have a free text box at the end of that survey, and we get a lot of good information because many of our respondents actually fill that out. Because we've been doing it so long, we not only have our own trend data, well, we do have our own trend data, we also can look at how we compare to other institutions, particularly those that may be similar to our demographic, the same size, private religious, those kinds of things. We've been doing it back since 2001. They actually changed the survey in 2002, and so we've been doing it from 2003. We've had a consistent set of questions that we can go back, and again, beginning this week, if any of you in this room got that invitation email over Alan Harker's signature, he's the VP of Graduate Studies and Research, please, when you get the invitation with the link to the survey, complete it, because it does help us make changes. Measuring Information Service Outcomes, or MISO, has a slightly different focus than LibQual in that it's looking a lot at information technology. And because the library is a place where a lot of people encounter information technology and use it, we decided to try that last year. So we've only done MISO once. It's likely that we will repeat it again next year, and we'll kind of do LibQual and MISO in a back and forth seesaw, because we think that we got some valuable information out of those as well. And Holt had a really great idea to involve some sociology courses in helping us to actually analyze the data from them. We had never actually collated all of the, say, comment information from LibQual. And so we got all of that together in the various years, and a sociology course actually did a textual analysis of the comments and gave us a good report about that. We have also had a sociology class look at, they also did some quantitative
They
data
did
as well.
quantitative on the MISO.
Oh, they did quantitative on the meso, and we have another sociology class looking at another set of meso questions to give us some analysis of that as well. So these are nationally normed instruments, again, that we have used to some effect, and we've made changes on the basis of, you know, I don't know how many of you know, we have a south entrance to the library coming again. But we so consistently heard in LiveWell, why do you not have a south entrance? It was helpful to be able to take that data to the administration, say, we just continue to hear this. You've seen vending machines in the library. We regularly had comments. I come to the library, I want to be able to eat there. Why don't you provide, why do I have to go out of the library to get food to eat? And finally, I said, well, the administration said, okay, we'll change our stance on that, and yeah, you can put some vending machines in. So this data has been valuable. Those are two very recent examples. There are others that could be given, but I'll turn it back over to Hope.
Okay. Those are the ones that are the larger ones. The rest of the assessments we do are more homegrown. Space utilization, this involves 16 different studies. This was, if you're taking a research design course, this was a great example of design creep. We started out with an initial study, and we just kept adding studies on and adding studies. But it took a look at the individual study space and group space. We did qualitative measures. For example, we sent students around with cameras and said, take a picture of a place that's really good to study and take a picture of a place that's too noisy. And then we'd interview them and saying, what do we know about those spaces? We took a look at the Research and Writing Center, computer lab use. For example, on campus, all the computer labs are declining in their use, except in the library. And so we did a little pop-up survey of about 7 questions to try and determine, so why are students using our computers when everything else isn't? And it goes back to that Switzerland comment that it's a common ground and things are there, resources are there for them to use. We'd often have students comment that they would be writing a paper, run down to the RWC, pull up the paper and say, here's the question, and then run back up to write some more, and do that several times while they're writing from there. And then we also have the quantitative, as we mentioned, with the LibQual and MISO. Another one that we're taking a look as group study rooms. We're taking a look at frequency of use, length of use, the number of patrons in the room, what kind of activities they do, preferred type of room, and reserve versus non-reserve. On the bottom, if you go to the 4th floor, you'll see where we've put some to let the light in, to get more light into the library on the 4th floor. It's a remarkable difference there. And then on the top one, in the Learning Commons, those are the non-reservable group study rooms. And we're currently examining those to say, well, if they don't reserve them and they can come there for as long as they want, how are they being used? And we're finding some unique features out. We found one guy that spent 9 continuous hours in one of those doing some study. He was the outlier. Most people come in that will have groups that come and go. We also have the situation that one person will be studying in there and another person will walk in and say, do you mind if I study? And the two of them will sit down and study together even though they're studying different topics. We take a look at what kind of tools they want as far as projectors, screens, whiteboards, so that we can offer that for them to help with their collaboration. And again, the top one is in the no shush zone, so if you've noticed, if you walk in there, it can be fairly noisy, and we're okay with that. Wayfinding in the sequel. Last summer, one of the 5 laws of librarianship is that you want to be able to help the patron find what they want as quickly as possible. And so in doing that, we have a number of signs to try and help direct people, a number of things to try and help people direct to where they are. Now, if you don't know a little bit of the history of our library, the middle building was built first. Then they added the back building, and to add the back building, they actually had to tear down a tree. The story's too cool not to tell. And it was a favorite tree that a lot of people got engaged under or had dates under. One guy, in protest, when they found out they were going to cut the tree down, actually chained himself to the tree, which is kind of extreme for BYU back then.
Him by himself or him and his wife? Like, was he still married?
He was, I don't know. You see, all I heard is he chained himself to the tree, and there was this big brouhaha about we can't cut this tree down, and then a storm came through, and lightning struck the tree and burnt it down. And So after so much discussion, the final word came, and so that section was built. And then, if you'll notice, then there's the underground section now that extends all the way up to the ASB and all the way over to the Harris Fine Arts and the BYU store all underground. And so by adding those, it becomes really confusing about how to set where we're going. So as a first step, we sent a student around and she counted every sign in the library that was accessible to students. There's over 10,000 of them. And about 20% of them are temporary signs.
She not only counted, she took pictures of many.
Yeah, we have, if there was multiple signs, duplicates, we only took one picture. We have about 250 pages of signs of showing them. And all accessible ones. So this was a precursor to what we're doing this semester. And if you come to the library this Thursday evening, Friday afternoon, or Saturday, you're going to see a bunch of frantic students running around trying to find something, followed by a little group of students videotaping them. And what we're going to be doing is saying, we want you to find this book, we want you to find this librarian's office, we want you to find this service in the library, and we're sending them around to find out where we're successful and where we fail, to be able to help them find out across these buildings that have been put together as the single library, to find out what we're doing. And we're comparing seniors, freshmen, high school students, so that we're going from a range of really novices that have little or no experience in the library to those that have spent 4 years in the library working with it, and to see what kind of differences. We're looking at how quickly they're able to locate the services, what time it takes, and we're looking to try and develop hopefully a set of heuristics that we can say, if something moves in the library, and stuff often moves in the library, how do we change the signage? How do we change things to make them more findable for people so that they're not lost in the library? New website evaluation. Last April, we released a new website. And as part of that, if you'll notice, that website can be accessed and looks identical whether you're using a smartphone, a tablet, or a computer. Same look across all three devices. We wanted to know, how's that being used? And we wanted to get some baseline data on that. And so when we took a look at this, we started out with a focus group, which informed a survey that we sent out, which it formed a usability study, and we had people actually come in and we came up with 17 key items to say, how can you find this on the different tablets? And we found some remarkable things on this one. We found out that undergraduate students are the most flexible, graduate students are the least flexible, and faculty are somewhere in between. We also found out that people use smartphones for really on-the-go tasks, that I look up the call number to find a book and the library map to find it, to reserve a group study room, to find time. But if you're doing research stuff, the computer is still king, that people like to do that. What we're looking at doing is saying, over the next 3 or 4 years, we're going to repeat this study and say, how has that changed as more technology gets into the hands and filters down and people come through that are used to using more technology, and looking from those. So that's one with the website evaluation. And that's generated one. One of the key ones we had is a study on personas. For those of you not familiar with personas, this is usually done in marketing and communications. And what they do is they describe a group of people as if they were a single person. So they look at the characteristics, what their needs are, the way they use things as if they were a single individual. And so we conducted this study with undergraduate students, and then we went out and did faculty and grads. And under undergrads, we came up with 10 different names: in and outers, focusers, explorers. Anybody want to know particularly which one of those means? Sidekicks are the people that go to the library and they're a little bit nervous about going there, so they go with someone that's a little bit used to them as kind of a mentor, and they'll come in and they'll study with them, but they're not studying the same thing necessarily. So that's a sidekick. So it's someone that's new to them, okay?
What about the pirate?
The pirates are the guys, the pirates are the guys that come in just to use the tools we have. So if you're changing VHS to DVDs, you come in to use our equipment because it's really expensive and you can do it for free at the library. If you're an undergraduate student, you'll bring a flash drive and you'll come use ours and save your stuff on the flash drive so you don't have to lug a computer around. That's a common thing we found with the pirates. Okay? So those are the ones from there. Islander, those are the people that they have a spot, and it is their spot, and don't you dare take it because it's quiet and it meets their needs and it suits them just perfectly. Yeah, and so that's where they're at. Now, if you take a look with the faculty and graduate students, we came up with 7 of those, and if you take a look, you'll notice that there's quite a bit of overlap that we have in and outers, focusers, and explorers that are same from there. The outsiders, one of the things we didn't do with the undergraduates is we only looked at use in the building. We didn't look how the library is used outside of the building, but we knew you guys didn't come there that often. And so we explored that, and we found 3 personas in there: the databaser, the simplifier, and the privileged, that use our website in those kind of regards. Anybody want to talk about, ask about those? Privileged are the professors who can go on and say, I'd like to order this book or this resource, and the library delivers it to their door. And when they're finished with it, they call up the library, and we come back and we pick it up and bring it back to them.
I still feel a little guilty every time I go to the secretary and say, can you call and have them pick up this book because I'm too lazy to walk it over?
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's an incentive for getting up to that, faculty stage.
What's the simplifier?
The simplifier is that they want to find the simplest way to do things, and so they will go in, and the simplest way is, I'm a single parent and I have kids at home and I need to write a research paper, so it's simpler for me to be able to access the library at home on my computer as opposed to having to go there physically to download something. That they look for simple ways to do things, and and that's just one of several examples that come from there.
What would be the difference between that and the databaser?
The databaser is ones that they have specific databases that they go to look at for resources. For example, if you're in engineering, they will go to the compendium, and that's their database that they live by. And so each discipline or each school will have specific databases that this is where I'm going to find the current research and what we're doing. There is some overlap with none of these. They are not mutually exclusive.
I don't want to take forever on this, but I am curious about the teacher role over there.
The teacher role is the role that faculty has because everyone's responsible for teaching, but as graduate students, sometimes you take on a role of teaching as one of your graduate duties, and so what they'll do is they come into the library to say what kind of roles, what kind of services can the library provide. For example, when I was a graduate student, Rick drugged me over to hear a presentation from Rachel Wadham that I'd already heard 3 times. And it was good because it was good each time, because each time I learned something new from Rachel, and she's incredible. And I can say that for each librarian that teaches those courses. So the teacher is kind of looking at saying, what resources do I have that the library can teach so I don't have to do that, or that I can improve on my course that I'm teaching?
Sounds like you're getting away with a lot.
Yeah. Kind of makes you wonder what they're paying them for.
To use all these resources. Well, now that I know that I can send grad students there for writing help, I'm really going to.
Yeah. Now, in addition to this, we went out and we wanted to know what percent, because not all these personas are created equally. And so we wanted to say what percent are done here. Now, I have to quantify this. With the undergraduate students, we said, what persona is most like you? As we did this, we came to discover that personas change. That people will switch from an islander to a focuser to a chillaxer, depending on what's happening at that time in the library. And so we had them choose from this, and then we did a principal components analysis to sit there and say, you could group these 4 together. Now, for design planning, this becomes really key, because it tells me, and it's doing kind of the Amazon thing, right? If you are an explorer, you will also likely to be a socializer and a chillaxer, and here's the services we have that'll enable you to do that. If you are a collaborator, here's a space where you and a sidekick can get together. And so it lets us know to plan for those together. And it lets us know in planning, are we doing stuff? And one of the common things we're doing, about 2 weeks ago, Jeff asked me to say, can you summarize all the space utilization studies? And so I summarized all the space utilization studies, but as I summarized them, I said, this space is a space that this persona would typically use. And this space is a space that would be suited well to this kind of persona, right? The group study rooms, that's an islander persona, right? Because you can sit there and book that space and be there for a while, but it could also be an individual group study carrel. We also did this for graduate students, but we separated those from factory, doctoral, and master's students. And some of them are quite simpler. So if you take a look, we came up with the efficient, effective, and expeditious. And those are just our terms that we developed as we came along from there. And you can see some of them switch over. For master's students, we saw that the databaser could actually be in both ones. There was crossover evidence from that. And so we're not really sure which one they're in. But you can see some of the ones, databaser use is really high because you guys don't like to come into the library. And you'll sit there and say, I don't use the library. But you do because you're just doing it online. And you use a lot of stuff online because it's more efficient and effective for what you're doing. Do you have any questions about and you'll notice that these numbers don't add up to 100 because in this case we let them select all that applied to them so that we could kind of see the difference of how they switched throughout the school year, which became, again, really key. Another one we have, and you've heard a lot about this from Rick, is the CID Center. It fosters interdisciplinary learning, it fosters collaboration, and it fosters library assistance. There's been a number of times that a group has been working there and they've said, we need help from a librarian, and so they've gone to the librarian that's in charge of that aspect, brought them up, and the librarian sat down and worked with them as part of the class, more than one occasion. And that's an option that you should know that you have. If you're stuck on research, go see a librarian. If we're the portal to all knowledge, the librarians are the key master. And they'll help you unlock the doors. And they'll help you to come from there. This is a center that we're quite excited about as far as collaboration. And we're just finishing a big analysis with it. Melissa and Casey are doing all the heavy lifting for me on this study. But we regularly work on there. They've been doing a phenomenal job of taking a look at what students are finding from it. And we're looking more at what faculty needs are right now to be able to meet those needs. Okay, so to steal from commercials, in the last 5 minutes, what's in your library? So on the last sheet of paper, here's what I want you to do. There's some of you that came up and said, here's how I currently use the library. And there's a number of you that says, I just don't go there. And I can tell you, I had a conversation with Casey and Melissa last time we met, and they're like, oh man, it'd be so nice if we had, and I'm not going to tell you what they said, because I don't want to influence you, but if there was something we could put in the library that would draw you in and be of benefit to you, what would that be? And that's what we want to know. Now, if it isn't clear to you from Jeff's comments, and I'll let you know, if you're looking at like colleges and schools on campus, he's the equivalent of an associate dean. Like that's how high up, that's whose ear you have today. And they listen. When we have the reports from the sociology students that take a look at long-term trend data, we will commonly have the university librarian and 2 or 3 of the associate librarians there, and they're asking for the reports to say, what are students saying? So you as a group of graduate students, we want to serve your needs. You've been underserved by us, and we get that. And so this is your chance to tell us. You can draw pictures, you can write down, you can do descriptions. Please don't do interpretive dance. But anything else from that, this is your time to put it on the paper, and you've got about 5 minutes to work on that.
Why don't you start with, we were talking about having a space that we can reserve, so like faculty can make their office, but maybe a library girl that has
They need more than us. I'm assuming 2 guys at the back table and 1 over at that table are faculty.
Yeah, those 2 at the back. Randy Davies is leaning over writing on the table now, and the one that's scratching, like hands behind the head, is Peter Rich. He's in faculty, and then Rick West. And yeah.
They are redesigning a lot of the carols.
And I've actually taken classes with some of these guys because they were just coming just as I was finishing.
Saying how digital is read more
and
than
so
paper. And I asked about Overdrive because Overdrive works really well. It exports to my Kindle. A lot of the other ebooks don't work as well. You have to read them in the browser. That doesn't seem to work as well. So I would say some kind of ebook.
That's an understatement.
Ebook, like easy ebook solution. And I was even thinking, too, Jeff, it would be really great if we're talking about the library facilitating my learning. So asking if you can try anything.
I don't know, this is the first I've heard about it.
Here's what I did with it. Here's how you. Yeah. This is the next step in kind of.
Because it's always
If you guys want to work with him on this also, we'll hear what you guys want in there too.
We're just conversing about this. Yeah.
It's got everything I want.
We've got such a cool library. It's really hard to
Imagine why you want anything.
figure out.
Yeah, it changes quite a bit though.
There is a search on the website. Searching always returns goofy results to me.
We've heard that and we're working on that.
I'll do a search term like on what was the one I was doing last abduction. Okay, it's a logical process, a reasoning process, and it returned. Let's see, Cleon Skousen novel.
That happens to me also.
A whole bunch of stuff that has no meaning. You can't figure out how you got it.
My guess is it has to do with the metadata that's listed in, because there's a lot of embedded metadata that have keywords or search terms. So if it connects to some of those words or has like branches that connect, then those will pull up. But I don't know. One of the big frustrations we've had is people have typed in like the exact title and they haven't got the book. But if you put brackets, like the quotation marks around it, that clears it up. It's part. If you have a title, if you put quotation marks around it, then it's saying all of these are one unit, and it looks at it from there. And so I think some of that is just education-wise of how to use it, but that's something that we all are looking at of saying, what do we need to do education-wise? What do we need programming-wise?
I think that's actually something Google used to do, and a lot of people, I'm assuming, use Google, but they've kind of stepped away from that now, and so people are used to using how that type of search functionality works, and it doesn't work the same.
It doesn't, and it's something that influences us a great deal, because what often we'll find, especially with undergraduates, is they will do a Google search, find the stuff they want, and then come onto the library because the library's granted them access to it. And some librarians chafe at that. Personally, I'm going, however you get to it, it makes no difference to me how you get to what you're supposed to be doing. So. I'm looking just 1 minute. Just 1 minute. Yeah. 1 minute. 1 minute. 1 minute.
And maybe not as useful for us, but they have reading support centers. They're not as tech support centers. So not my computer's broken. That's Cougar support in the bookstore. But my computer's doing something weird. I don't know what to do about it. Or I'm wondering how to do X in Excel, and you help me do X in Excel, and like a walk-in tech support.
We're just finishing off. If you guys are there.
APA. I'm trying to do this thing in Illustrator. Can you like a record help you do stuff? But if you want to just drop in, walk in. As far as the sheet music goes, it would be really great too if there was a way to listen to the music. And sometimes I couldn't tell what exactly the music was I was trying to integrate. It would be great to be able to like listen to it and be like,
If I could draw your attention back here, please.
Request to borrow. You can listen to 30-second clips.
Having been a former alumni and having sat through these sessions while I was doing my doctoral studies, I know that when it comes 10-2 that you don't get in the way of food and graduate students. It's kind of a dangerous activity. So we're finishing off. The one thing I would like you to do, if on the paper you just have, if you could write down wants, like in big letters, so I can differentiate it from the first one of how you're using, because I am going to be looking at these as the assessment librarian. I'm going to do a shameless plug for us, not just for LibQual that's coming out that some of you will get, or you may hear others that are getting it. Encourage you to do that. Part of your program requires that you have different projects that you work on, one of which is an evaluation project. If you're interested in doing an evaluation project, there's my email address. Come see me. I just changed to itty bitty living space, but huge evaluation possibilities. If you want to know what it's like to work with me, talk with Casey and Melissa. They'll give you a very clear picture. I've worked with doctoral students and undergrad students. Sometimes we're able to fund you, sometimes we're not, but we have a lot of interesting projects. And quite honestly, the comment I've had from several that have come worked with me is once they've got into the library and see the interesting things that there are to evaluate, they're asking, where can I get a job that does this? It's really an entertaining field. I can't imagine wanting to go anywhere else. It's filled with just hugely intelligent people and just tremendous opportunities, and libraries are changing radically. I used to think of libraries as this granite rock that you walked in and nothing ever changed, and in the year and a half I've been there, I've come to realize that they're more like a river, that the banks are constantly changing, that there's sandbars that are changing, and it's all to meet the needs of its patrons, which are you. So we hope to invite you in, and we hope to take a look at the things you have to see what we can implement, and I wish you well. If you have any questions, by all means come see me. Thank you.
And I'll just follow up with that. They're going to come down and have soup with us, and so let's let them get down and make sure they can get some lunch, and then you can ask your questions while you're eating lunch.
Yes, do one.
I need to click these back. Thanks.